What do you do if you want to train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but there are no good schools in your area, or you just live so far away that it's like a 2-hour drive to go to class and come back? And that's obviously not sustainable for most people if you have a job. What do you do? Well, there are a couple main options, a couple different options. We're going to talk about them. And I've answered this question so many times in emails, in articles, one-on-one with people, on Twitter, that I'm going to now make a video about it. And then my answer will be immortalized on video as well. So, number one, in the current day and age, there's no reason that you can do most of the heavy lifting for learning jiu-jitsu on your own. You can do it with a training partner, a couple of training partners, and a couple of mats for less than a couple of $100 of puzzle mats, and a willing person who's willing to let you bend and twist their body and crush the other person. You can for sure learn the basics of jiu-jitsu. Now there's a caveat, and it's going to be the same caveat as for the next solution, which is to find a school to train at that teaches some grappling, but that isn't specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. For example, judo schools. Judo is an amazing martial art. It has a couple of problems. Number one, stand-up judo has a pretty high rate of injury. I'm not gonna lie, most of my orthopedic injuries come from some kind of judo or takedown practice. Number two, some judo schools do a lot more groundwork than others. Judo has tachiwaza, which is stand-up training, and newaza, which is ground training. And if you go to a school that's very, very tachiwaza heavy, you're just not going to get the same level of ground training. Now, maybe you can cut a deal with some of those people, some of your training partners, to stay after class and do some additional newaza. That's often a good answer. Maybe you can meet up with those people on the weekend or at a different time and go train with them. That's also a good answer. So judo is one really good option. There are a lot of judo clubs throughout North America. Judo's been around a lot longer than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It has been infiltrating the North American market for a lot longer than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So there may be more judo clubs. What are some other options? Well, if you want to wrestle, if there are options for people wanting to wrestle in your age category, wrestling's a really good base for martial arts. No, you're not going to learn passing a guard. No, you're not going to learn submissions. But the base that you're building that then sets you up for success when you do get a chance to train those specific aspects of grappling, man, you're going to be off to a really good start. Now, some other schools, they'll teach, they say we teach ground fighting. Try and go to a school, a martial arts school, and ask, do you do ground fighting or grappling? They will say yes. Now, maybe it's because they've discovered that in their kata, they've got one move that's technically a wrist lock, and now that one move that they do in kata form qualifies them to be a grappling school. So you got to tune your bullshit detector. But a lot of schools will have some kind of grappling program, and some grappling is usually better than none. Maybe you can find a Krav Maga school that has got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt who teaches a class that emphasizes a lot of ground fighting. Can you learn from a blue belt? Absolutely. My first instructor was a blue belt. My first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor was a blue belt, and I got a lot out of it. Of course, he was a very attention to detail-oriented guy who knew a lot and had a strong grounding in the combative arts and training athletes. But, I still learned an awful lot from him. If you're doing the training with your buddies option, you can get instruction a couple of ways. There's a ton of stuff on the internet. There's a ton of instructionals, DVDs, apps, online streaming products, membership sites, some of which I produce, but there are other good products as well. You can learn an awful lot from them, but you have to be careful that you're not learning completely in isolation. If it's just you and your friends, and you're doing your best, you never really learn if you're getting it, if there's something fundamental that you're missing. So again, you have to tune your bullshit detector, but this time you have to tune your bullshit detector so that you're not bullshitting yourself. So how do you do that? Well, let's say you live in small town Ohio. You're way in the backwoods somewhere, it takes you 2 hours to make it to a school, and you're going to set up, you're going to train once a week at the YMCA and do some judo, but they don't do that much groundwork and you're not 100% sure if they're very good. and you're going to do some additional training with your friends. And you're going to train in a garage somewhere. You're going to spend $200 on a bunch of 3-foot square puzzle mats, and you're going to train. But how do you know that you're not fooling yourself? The answer is once every couple of weeks, once a month, go to an established jiu-jitsu school. Do the drive. If necessary, do the flight and go spend a week at a school. Because a week of getting your ass kicked by a bunch of really good people will establish your bullshit detection skills. You'll be able to very quickly learn what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're not doing, the things that you're missing. And then you can take that knowledge, you can take that experiential knowledge and bring it back to your training group, and you'll be a much better person for it. It's possible if you're training in isolation, if you're off training without occasionally bouncing your skills and the techniques that might work against a low-level guy, your training partner, if you're not testing that against high-level guys, that you're building a game that really only works against white belts. You don't want that. You want to be building a game that'll serve you well as you go up through the ranks of jiu-jitsu. By going and getting this calibration occasionally, you are at less of a risk of fooling yourself. Similarly, if you have Joe's MMA and Hapkido school down the road, and you go there and you ask, do you guys do grappling? Do you do ground fighting? Absolutely we do. It's an important part of our curriculum. We teach all the moves that you need to know to keep yourself safe on the ground. That's pretty good. But without going and calibrating your knowledge once in a while and going training at a real jiu-jitsu school, it's pretty hard to know if Joe is feeding you a line of BS. So once again, by going and training at a legitimate school every couple of weeks, if it's a long drive, a couple times a year, if it's a flight, just going and getting that experience, you'll really learn a lot. You won't be able to learn all the techniques you'll need to know, but you'll develop the feel, how people are rolling, how people are moving, what pressure really feels like, what it feels like to go with a really good guy. And then you can learn all the techniques that you need to know online or through instructionals. The techniques are not the problem. The problem is training methods, and the problem is feel. The feel of the pressure of somebody grinding into you the right way. The feel of somebody just being a step ahead of you or 2 steps ahead of you the whole way, and there's nothing that you can do. These are really valuable experiences to have. So, if you live in a place where there's no jiu-jitsu, you want to train jiu-jitsu, try to train at some kind of grappling somewhere, somehow. Be that a Hapkido school that includes a little bit of jiu-jitsu in their curriculum, be that a judo school, be that a wrestling program. If they don't look at you, and what are you doing, man? You're 30 years old, you want to train with a bunch of high school students, you must be a pervert, get out of town. So it can be hard to find a wrestling program for grown-ups in a lot of small towns. That's just part of the problem. Or you can train with a small group of guys, all of whom have the same goal, which is to learn the basics of jiu-jitsu, and you can come a very long way in the modern day and age. And then, of course, the most important thing is to occasionally go and calibrate your skills, calibrate your knowledge, and get some feedback from people who are better than you, who've been at it for longer than you. And you don't need to do that every day. You can go learn a bunch of stuff and go away and train it. Try it against your training buddies, try it against your training partners, come to the next roadblock, then go back to the school, the person that you learned it from, and learn the next set of things that you need to learn. Okay, so the good news is you've picked an excellent time to be interested in jiu-jitsu, because there are so many resources out there for you. There's so many options available to you that all you need to do really, ultimately, is make the effort to train, to absorb knowledge, to actually put it into practice, and then once in a while to go calibrate what it is that you've learned. I hope this helps. Take care, and good luck with your training, regardless of whatever small town you live in.